Um, I would just like to make one comment on the subject that was just discussed about staff exchange. What I've discovered in my experience at Ben-Gurion University is that, and it would be interesting if this is similar in other institutions, but the biggest barrier to this kind of staff exchange that I've seen at our university is that department directors or supervisors react negatively when someone on the staff shows an interest in the staff exchange, and their first reaction is, well, what am I going to do for 3 weeks when you're gone? And this is very unfortunate, I think. And it's something that, food for thought for all of us.
It's not only this, it's just
Sorry, no?
usually administration is not going abroad. It's like they have in mind that only faculty is going abroad.
Right.
It's not just something, it's like...
Well, of course, this comes together with an attitude that we frequently encounter, that many individuals relate to study abroad as academic tourism and nothing more. And this is also an unfortunate phenomenon, and it's cultural, and it's changing, I think, as well. I have a question before we get into any real discussion. Amal, you mentioned in your presentation that the Erasmus Plus, if I understood correctly, Israel would no longer be eligible for the mobility program. And I'd like to hear what you have to say on this, and also Shira, if you have any information on this.
No, I mentioned that Erasmus Mundus Action 2, as it is running right now, there will be a last call for project proposals. And Israel is not going to be funded by this last call for proposals, but definitely Israel is included in the Erasmus Plus program.
Okay.
So, but only the call for proposal is announced every year by the European Commission to allow coordinators in Europe to establish some kind of partnership and apply for the project for a certain region. That's what we've been doing since 2010 for Israel. And this year there will be one final last call for proposals, meaning that the last call for Erasmus Mundus as it runs so far under the Erasmus Mundus umbrella. But in Erasmus Plus, there will no longer be the name Erasmus Mundus. The program will continue in a different way, but Erasmus Mundus as a label will not be called Erasmus Mundus, and of course, the conditions of the program will be a little bit different, and definitely Israel will be included. And within our partnership, we are now trying to create a way how to cooperate with each other to try to adapt to the changes within Erasmus Plus. So we definitely are planning, we are insisting on continuing our cooperation, but we have to adapt to the new rules of the European Commission.
Okay, thank you. I have several questions I'd like to put to our panel, but let me emphasize, any question that comes from the audience would be more than welcome, or any issue or comment. We've spoken a great deal today, particularly in the afternoon, about mobility. My perception is that mobility, to be successful, must be bidirectional. Whether on the university level or the country level, if a university has an agreement with another university in another country and students are only going one way, that agreement will probably not be long-lived. The question I'd like to put to the entire panel is, and everyone comes with a different approach and experience, is what can Israeli institutions do to be more attractive to European students? And I'm excluding from your possible answers the obvious one of having more courses in English. Please, who would like to take up the challenge?
I could start.
Amal, be my guest.
Well, I think the question should be how can you reach the demand from the European students rather than wanting to make your higher education more attractive to them, because from my own experience, Israel is very attractive for European students to apply for. And the higher education in Israel is really looked at from a very high quality kind of prospect from the students. So when they apply to Israel, it's the same as if they are applying to the United States. So it is not considered. I don't think that a bigger effort will be demanded to advertise Israeli higher education further to European students. But I think that from my own experience, the demand from European candidates is not really always met by the Israeli higher education institutions. Maybe some institutions are more welcoming to international students than others, but I think that this is a question to be discussed here locally. I think that the demand is there, but the question is, are institutions prepared to meet that demand?
So you think the demand does exist in Europe, that European
Definitely.
students do want to come to study in Israel?
Definitely.
I am.
Would all of you agree with that statement?
Yeah.
Shira, please.
Thank you. My answer to your question is very simple. I think that higher education institutions in Israel need to invest more in developing recognition mechanisms such as ECTS and diploma supplement, and to invest more in student support services, especially international students, and create this atmosphere for international students.
I agree.
When you say atmosphere, are you speaking only about these recognition techniques, or?
No, it's a whole approach, you can say.
Okay.
Yes, I would agree with Amal. There is a huge demand, and Israel and higher education institution have a quite good reputation. And many students would be very interested. But the thing is that this kind of atmosphere, what you're talking about, includes different soft measurements. Just give you an example. At the Erasmus office at my faculty, I was introducing a buddy program, and this works very well. That means that, for instance, students who went with Erasmus abroad, they are welcoming students who are coming in, and they are helping them to get an orientation at the university level, at different levels, because this kind of informal contact works much better than any official way of organizing some meetings. Or I have a student who is giving a seminar for Erasmus students, so that all the questions they have a place where they can talk about it. So these kind of soft measures are always welcome.
If I may,
Thank you. Yes, Amal.
one last comment. I think that what happens right now is that the demand that students want to come here, but what I get the impression from my students who apply, they feel that everything is solved on individual basis. So they want to come, they want to apply, they really need to find an academic who's willing to accept them, and then there is a struggle of finding accommodation, and you know, it's always very hard to accommodate an international student, and it's not well known in all institutions in the culture of the university that there is a concept of international students. So I really think that instead of solving those issues on an individual basis, it needs to become a system within the university. And I see the model of Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. They already have international office. They are trying to change the feeling that international students are welcome only to international school program, but it needs to become a culture of the university that it is quite normal to accept international students, and integrate them, most importantly, integrate them with your students in the normal classroom, and not isolate them with a group of international students for the international school, which is not a tradition in European higher education. So I think it's really very important to try to understand the culture of accepting international students, to internationalize the institution at home rather than trying to be involved internationally. But when it comes to accepting international students, I would accept them only to a limited international school where they will be basically only in Israel, but they will be in a group of international students, and they will not really feel that they came to a mobility in Israel. And this is something that is very challenging, but I think this should be changed with the future.
Well taken.
Can I
Lisa.
add
Oh,
a word?
Yes.
Well, first of all, there are endogenous issues and exogenous issues. The endogenous issues are, I think, the quality, the reputation of the institution. The reputation has to be as good as possible because people don't want to go, across the ocean or across the Mediterranean Sea in this case, and study in a low-level institution. So the reputation is important, and this reputation has to be backed up with facts. It's not only having a good reputation, but it's also providing good substance. The exogenous thing is the environment. You said that all the Ben-Gurion University students wanted to go to Sciences Po because
It's in Paris.
It's in Paris. So put the Israeli university in Paris, you'll have plenty of students. And so this is, by the way, I think, I don't have numbers, I don't have figures, but there are two places in Israel where the city in which the universities, I'm speaking of two universities, where they are, support the idea of attracting students. One of them is Jerusalem, and the Hebrew University has, I think, a significant number of foreign students, and Tel Aviv University, because Jerusalem is because it's holy, and Tel Aviv because it's fun.
Because it's not holy.
Yes, I have a very loud voice, so I probably don't need the microphone. But I want to just address this comment from a slightly different angle as a representative of someone who works in an organization that very much tries to help Arab students in Israel integrate into the university environment. And I think that some of the issues that you're bringing up are actually very similar to what we talk about when we talk about why it's difficult for Arab students to succeed in Israeli academia. We talk a lot about how campuses aren't multicultural. They're really focused on the experience, the life experience, the needs of Jewish students. Whether, for example, one thing that you talked about was everyone has to solve their problems on an individual basis. Now, Israeli students who are post-army and who've traveled and who are older probably have more life skills and more of an ability to navigate the culture, but when we're talking about foreign students or Arab students who go into university straight after high school, it's not so easy for them. They don't necessarily have those kinds of capacities. They don't have the support. So I think that a lot of these issues are very similar. I think that it behooves the universities to think about the fact that they have a very diverse student body that has many different kinds of needs, and to think about I'm not an expert in this, but think about what kinds of institutions they can build in terms of addressing all of those different needs. And I just want to make one other comment as a former, as someone who stayed at Hebrew University as an exchange student. I think that universities in Israel probably do very well with Jewish students like me who come for the one-year program or whatever. But obviously the needs of European students and the expectations of European students are very different, and it's as well useful to think about in that context. So.
I have a question. We are talking about mobility, where the online teaching comes into the picture when you don't have to be mobile in order to learn together with other people abroad.
Well, there is a loss of a certain element which is extremely important, and this is, the interaction between students from various countries, from various cultures and so on. But there is no doubt that it is an imperfect substitute for international education. I mean, and we have, by the way, we have, at least at Sapir College, we have courses that are given simultaneously with with the high-tech thing, simultaneously with places in the United States. So there is a problem of the hour difference, but so the course is given, I don't know, late at night, at 9 o'clock at night at Sapir, and at the same time, which is, I don't know, 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock, somewhere else. And these are really common courses with students, seeing each other and participating together in the course. Of course, these are not courses, that are big lectures and so on. It's more seminars and so on. But it works. It works. The human contact is a little bit lost.
Just like to add, I'm teaching for 5 years now, online courses, academic courses in the United States, without even meeting my students physically once. And there is a possibility of human touch, human dialogical. But the question is growing e-learning and global learning associated with courses given somewhere in the space together, where this comes into the whole idea of globalization and exchange of knowledge and stuff, and students are building courses not in Brno or in Sapir College, but together somewhere there, and working together synchronously, as you said. Time differences matters, or asynchronously. That's how I work with the United States. Then time doesn't matter.
I think that you've raised a whole area that is going to become an extremely hot dispute in education, because there's no question there's a huge growth of online education, of the MOOCs and other distance learning approaches. And even if, as you say, the human contact possibly between the teacher and student can be overcome, if it can, or perhaps it can to a degree, but it doesn't overcome the interaction between students. And I think the way online education is perceived today, it's the total antithesis of everything international education stands for: bringing people together, cultural exposure, diversity of experience, and all the rest, things that we've been hearing about today. In my mind, there's no question this is going to be one of the huge debates, at the very least, if not disputes, facing higher education in the next decade. It's an interesting issue because it's difficult to fight the rationale of online education, which brings lower cost education to greater numbers of people, and the massification of education all over the world is creating strains that no one knows how the existing academic institutions will deal with. Okay. Just wait for the mic.
So I'm here from the National Union of Israeli Students. I have one question for you guys. I think that education abroad, the opportunity to go and study a semester out of Israel or out of countries in Europe is very important. But we know that the criteria for the students who are chosen to go study abroad are usually for academic achievements. And it creates a situation which in people who have physical handicap or mental handicap of sorts, their academic achievement is not as good as others, and they don't get the opportunity to experience life on the outside. Do you think that maybe there is a way in which the process to choose the students who go abroad would be include criteria of involvement in the community and stuff like that? That's the question, actually.
Thank you. I'm actually glad you are here to begin with. I will have to discuss something with you afterwards. I hope you will stay. And I'm glad you asked this question, actually, because the beauty of the European projects is that they would like to give an equal opportunity to all students. And of course, academic achievement is very important. And I think that the especially for the home institution who is sending their student, they would like to see the best students to get this opportunity to go abroad because it's very prestigious and it's not the funds are not available all the time. So they would like to have a say in the matter when they nominate their students. But I would like to give you good news about Erasmus Mundus program is that, and especially in email, the program guidelines of Erasmus Mundus tells us that we have to not only look at the academic achievement of a candidate, but also we have, during the selection procedure, we have to respect some cross-cutting issues. And this includes not only gender balance, but also, let's say, thematic field balance. So we are not allowed to send only students from medicine or social sciences, but we have to try to make a balance. And also students who have students with, let's say, disability, they will be given priority at the selection. And also the disability, not only physical, but also it could be socio-economical or discriminated or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So there are some issues that we look at the selection procedure. Now, in email, the selection procedure is very complex. It's really many stages. It's not only the decision of one person. So first of all, the partnership decides at the kickoff meeting what kind of criteria will be taken when we evaluate the application. And we decided that it will not be only academic, because of course we want to give an opportunity to students who could also be creative, not only in having A's and B's, but also they could be good students. So we have a weight for each criteria. We look at the motivation statement. We look at the other achievements, not only academic. Of course, the different criterion has different way when we calculate the average evaluation of the application. Home institution evaluates, host institution also evaluates the same application. We get an average of both of those, and then we have ranking of applications, and we select the students with the highest rank. But it's not always the best students academically in terms of, you know, having only A's and B's in their achievement, but also when we look at ranking, we also give priority to students with disability or with vulnerable situation, let's call it. And also we look at gender balance. We try to have as many females as males in the program. I think this is not an issue in Israel because females also apply for the program, whilst we see this problem in other regions. In Erasmus Mundus, it's not only in Israel, but it's also in other regions. So we definitely agree with you that we don't look only at the academic achievement of the student. We want to send the excellent students who are the best motivated, but not only academically, but overall. And we do look at the special conditions that the students have. We also have to mention, since we have our associated partner Dirasat, Lisa is here, and I have to mention that we also have a certain quota for Israeli students of Arab origins. So there is a certain category for them where they can apply through that category, not only in the as all the other grantees, but also they could apply through this certain criteria. So we have a quota for those students to make sure that they will be selected. So I hope that we will make a change. It will not, and students will be motivated to apply. And as I mentioned, it's really sometimes students of social sciences will be able, because they have the skill. Students of humanities, they can submit an application that is really quite impressive. It's normal, but a student of engineering maybe don't know how to write a motivation statement, you know. So we also look at that, and we try to balance from different perspectives, and we hope that we will be fair in the end to all candidates. Thank you.
I would like to add that at BDU we have another criteria, which is social activities and volunteering. If a student have never been in any other activity but academic activity, I don't think we will choose him, because he has to be an ambassador as well, not only a student. He cannot be ambassador if the whole day long he studies. He has to do some kind of social activity and be prepared to be also a community-oriented person. So that's one of the criteria as well.
Maybe I add just some points. for instance, in the Erasmus program, as such, academic achievements are less much important than other things, as for instance social engagement. And we have a kind of diversity policy which is established in a university. That means you have to prefer in the selection process people with disabilities or according to age, gender. It is an intersectional approach we chose to look for when we are going to nominate students. It is a bit different, but the academic achievements are not the first thing we are looking about.
Thank you.
We are talking here mostly about student exchange during the academic year, so it's like 4 to 5 months approximately, maybe a little bit less. What about summer programs, specifically applicable to European institutions and European students? What about opportunity in Israel and in Europe for students to go abroad during the summer or for shorter periods? And how relevant it is? I know that mostly for European students during the summer it's not so relevant, but is there new news about it?
Well, if I speak for the Erasmus Mundus program, it's unfortunately this possibility is not there for students. The mobility has to be at least 1 semester and maximum of 1 year for the exchange mobility, and also it could be 2 years for the master's for the full degree and 3 years for the full doctoral degree. So in Erasmus Mundus this possibility does not exist. However, I think that the trend in general in Europe, there are many institutions who really have very strong summer schools and winter school programs. And at Masaryk University, for example, we do have this cooperation mainly with Australia and Canada for the time being, but we are planning to expand, and it's really quite important to have the summer school programs. And I think that even with European funds, there are many opportunities, not in the Erasmus Mundus program, but Erasmus Plus will also deal with those matters. And it not only will support study, but also work placement. So there will be possibility for work placement financial support. And so we hope that Erasmus Plus, it has a much bigger budget. It's 19 billion euros for the implementation period. So we hope that the possibilities will be much higher for the students. And it will include summer schools, hopefully.
I would just like to comment on this question that this hasn't come up at all in the discussion today, but if you want to think in terms of summer schools, one of the things that has to be on the table and you should be aware of is the Israeli academic calendar, which is already an obstacle in ongoing exchanges. Israeli students to go abroad for a semester almost inevitably need to go abroad in the first semester because the second semester, by the time our first semester is concluded, it's in the middle of the second semester almost everywhere else, so they can't do that. The reverse is true for students coming to Israel. If they're coming for 1 semester, they can't come for the first semester on the Israeli calendar because then they won't get back to their home institutions in time for the second semester. Now this becomes even more complicated when you get into the summer, because by the time we finish our academic year, there are a number of countries in Europe that are already beginning their next academic year. The summer vacations, if we call them vacations, do not coincide. So it's something that should be in the background. I would like to move on to, excuse me, to another question. And this concerns, and I understand the limitations of discussing Erasmus Plus and what's going to happen, but in any case, I would like to get your opinions on this. Tempus, and we're going back to the heart of our workshop today. Tempus 4 for the last 7 years, and I think even Tempus 3 before it, put an enormous emphasis in its content on the Bologna process. It wasn't exclusively about Bologna, but there was a lot of focus on Bologna. Now, Europe is just in the last stages of implementing Bologna. It's a done deal. It's finished. What will be the main, or what do you think could be the main content points, focal issues of the program that replaces Tempus in terms of content and substance?
Well, I know that the capacity building project that will be ex-Tempus project, they will continue to promote the Bologna process principle.
They will continue
Yeah,
promoting the Bologna?
But maybe there will be additional issues more wide. But there will be a continuation of the Bologna process.
I don't know if that's good news or not, but it's interesting. Do you have any comments, Stefika or Aman, on this?
Well, I agree that it will be also trying to keep promoting the Bologna process, but I think that will be the main, the only thing to concentrate at, because what they explained so far, and please take this only in not completely finished way, because they told us only the draft and it's still not signed by the European Parliament, but they told us that the program capacity building that will replace Tempus will basically be mainly trying to help non-European institutions to establish their international capacity. This is one thing, so they will concentrate. So it is basically similar to Tempus, like trying, but it will not only be training for Bologna process, but training for increasing international capacity. And the other part is to actually help to, it will be the hardest part of the program, to provoke changing the not the legislation, but the concept how the universities work. So they will try to basically fight against the bureaucracy of administration in the countries when it comes to international higher education. I don't know what to imagine under this concept, but I think that what they are trying to do is that we know that, for example, joint programs could be problematic in terms of national legislation or not very flexible. So the new program will try to facilitate those things, try to change concepts in a higher level.
Okay. Another issue perhaps worth thinking about a little bit here. Amal, in your presentation you had a couple of very interesting slides that related to the goals and objectives of Erasmus Mundus. And the goals that you presented were dealt with bringing Israel closer to European higher education. I think for us, we are facing an extremely interesting question, and that is, we observe the European higher education area, which has universally adopted Bologna. A minor question before the major question is, have we missed the boat? Are we too late? I don't know. But should Israel's higher education aspire to become part of the European higher education area, the way our higher education did become part of the European research area? Should this be one of our goals? And if so, how should we get this process moving? This is for all of you.
Tough question.
I think it's a very hard question, and I think that to answer should Israeli higher education institutions become more involved in European, of course, I have to say that because I work for a European institution, and for us, Israel is, as part of our new strategy for internationalization, is a priority region. So we definitely, and I know that Europe, for Europe, Israel is an important region in terms of higher education. The question is, would Europe be able to live up to the expectations of the higher education institutions in Israel? So we know that there is a big tradition of and history of cooperation between the United States and Israel in terms of students exchange and research exchange, academic exchange, but it's not to the same extent with Europe. And I think that it's definitely the challenge of Europe to meet the demands and try to compete with higher education in the United States, and I think that it's already on a good way, and it's so far I think the plans are going quite well, and I think this is a very tough question for a person from my position to judge, but I believe in the vision of the European Commission towards achieving a more internationalized higher education and promoting European higher education around the world. So that's my opinion.
Would anyone else like to comment?
All I
on
can
that?
say about that is that I think we cannot compare. We cannot compare research with teaching. And you know, the integration of Israel in the research program is quite easy because the whole issue is of funding of research and of course of cooperation among people who are in the same field more or less. If you want to integrate a teaching system, it is very, very complicated. It requires a lot of adjustments and of adaptation of, I don't know, substances and so on and so forth.
And dedication.
And of course, dedication. It's
And also
huge.
the credit
It's a huge.
system.
And the credit
If you
system.
look on the Israeli credit system, you don't have anything like this, and you would like to go to the European, to ECTS. So this is also very challenging. But Moshe, as you know, on the national level, it's not possible that Israel will join the Bologna process at this moment. But I think that each higher education institution in Israel needs to and should aspire to be part of the higher education, European higher education area, and to have more mobilities, to have more recognition mechanisms, and so on.
Right.
So it should be on the institutional level, I think.
Does anyone else have opinions on Israel and Europe and how important should it be to us to become part of the European higher education area?
I just wanted to add from the National Campus Office perspective one point. We spoke during the whole day about the importance of international academic cooperation, and Hannah also mentioned the fact that the Campus program in Ben-Gurion University generated cooperation within the university, in the university. But I think, as I see it, that one of the most important advantages of international academic cooperation and projects is actually the cooperation between higher education institutions in Israel. It's not an obvious thing, and we should also keep this in mind.
So obviously I can't speak from the Israeli perspective, but my impression is that Israel is in a quite good position because the Bologna process is still going on also in Europe. It is not finished at all. And we had many also nuts and bolts in the establishment of Bologna. And I think, as I heard today, there are many experiences with international projects, and I think this is, in general, a good starting point also to get into the programs in Europe. I think so. This is a good experience you have. And maybe you can, you have the advantage, you can take the elements you need from Bologna. You don't need all the elements which were also not working in Europe. Yeah, and this could be an advantage, but you can try to get the best and the bad experiences in Europe that have been made. That's one point. And another point is also that I think because this structure seems to me very different, and I think this difference makes a big chance to also to learn from Europe, from Israel, the other way around. And so I think there are many chances to further this.
If I may make one last comment on that, I think that whatever the European Union is giving those funds and those projects for cooperation with non-European institutions is to try to give those institutions the opportunity of, if I may say, testing waters. So it's just like those funds and those projects are pilot projects to establish a long-term tradition of bringing the higher education closer to each other. And I think that those funds are actually mobiling students, giving money for partners to meet with each other. This is the purpose of all of that. It's all of it is a pilot project to make sure that we get to know each other and then gain the trust. So this is really important that Israeli higher education institutions will gain the trust about European higher education institution, and to make sure that cooperating with Europe will bring better quality to education in general and to international education in particular. And
the other way around as well.
Yeah, and the other way around, of course. Yes, that's why I said, gaining trust in Europe, because we also look at it in the same way. And also, I think that what Shira said is really quite realistic, that it should be done for now on institutional level, but we hope that with time, with all those funds and all those pilot projects that we are going through, which will take many years to come, then it will become on a national level rather than on institutional level. But things take time.
I don't know if I can deal with so much optimism. Thank you. Unless there are any questions that someone would like to, some new subject someone would like to raise, I would like to thank our European and Israeli speakers for so generously sharing their time and experience with us. Thanks to Katharine Hirschwitz and Michael Mertis of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. And of course, thanks to the BTC Dream Team, Nati Govhari, who has just joined us, Hannah Moskovitz and Hila Zahavi, Yoav Friedman, many of you know, who is not here with us today. Yoav is practicing what the BTC teaches. He's presently at the University of Lund in Sweden on an Erasmus Mundus staff exchange. And I would like to thank all of you for your participation, for coming here today, despite the obstacles. Arrivederci.
And thank you if you can leave the feedback notes.